First of all, I want to thank Chris, but also we're going to do one more call with Mike from Wadena. Thanks for waiting.
Oh, hi guys.
Hello.
Hello.
And I apologize, Mike, because technically we are over time. Not that we're extremely time limited, but I did want to get to your call and see if we could maybe address it fairly quickly. So if you can.
Yes, I'll just go straight to the point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm currently identifying myself as an evangelical Christian, but I've been struggling with my faith a lot. And one of the greatest fears, that I have in me is, if I stop believing, and if I'm wrong later, if I die, everything is going to go to hell. So, what I want to know is, how can I know for sure that my Christian faith is not, real, and that I should just I should just stop believing in this and just, continue with my own life.
Okay, so first of all, you're looking for a reason to think that you're wrong. And I think that's exactly backwards. What you should be looking for are the reasons for which you're right, and failing to find those, you couldn't keep believing. But if your primary concern is, if I give this up, I risk going to hell, which religion are you a part of?
I consider myself just as an evangelical Christian.
Okay. Have you spent any time worrying about the afterlives from other religions? Are you worried about going to perhaps an Islamic notion of hell?
No, I never thought of that. No.
Yeah. So if you haven't spent any time worrying about, hell from the point of view of another religion, and you're not sure that yours is right, what if one of those other religions is right, and you remain a Christian, and you go to their bad afterlife?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I understand what you're saying, yeah.
So if we're going to make this sort of Pascal's wager about what should we believe, we know that there are many different notions about gods and many different notions about afterlives, and even within Christianity, there are different ideas. Soteriology is the study of what one must do to be saved, and there's disagreement within Christian denominations about what you have to do to be saved. There's also disagreement about whether or not there's a hell, whether it's a literal place or whether you simply cease to exist. And so what you need to do is look at it and say, okay, here's all of these potentials plus more that I don't know about.
Yeah.
Should you work towards the best heaven? Should you work to avoid the worst hell? Or should you try to find out which one is most reasonable? And if it turns out that none of them have supporting evidence, then isn't the most reasonable position, I am not convinced of any of those, and if any of them are right, and that God decides to punish me for not accepting it because there wasn't sufficient evidence, then I am more moral than the thug who's going to punish me. I am better than that. I am intellectually honest and rigorous. And what if the whole thing is a test to see who's gullible enough to buy into Christianity? And then there's a God that punishes you for being too gullible. If you can't tell the difference between any of these, then you should not accept that any of them are true until there's evidence for them. And this is why looking for a reason that you're wrong is already starting off on the wrong foot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, definitely.
I have a question, too, for you, Mike, because I know that what you're talking about, Matt gave you a really good, reasonable response, but you're dealing with fear, right? I mean, you're dealing with fear, and fear doesn't always respond to rationality. So I want to just ask you, if there were a God that would send, let's say, you sound like somebody that really would want to know if there's a God that wants you to know about him. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you would be willing to be open to the idea of God. You would like to find God if God wants you to find him and God wants you to do certain things that are good and right. You're willing to do all of that. You're searching, and that's what you would like to do, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and the fear is that if you don't do this properly, you could end up believing something wrong and then end up in hell, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And here's my question to you. Do you believe that this God, if he wants you to find him, would be willing to reach out and give you what's required if you made an honest effort to search for that God. If you really investigated, if you really applied yourself to looking at the explanations and the reasons, and you really critically went out and looked for this God, for the evidence and the reasons that are provided, and you gave it a critical assessment, God should be willing to then assist you if you're really putting yourself into it on that level, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, that would only be fair, that you're doing everything you can, and so God should want to make sure that that you get what you're looking for because you're applying yourself as hard as you can. So let's say that at the end of this journey, you end up believing something wrong, that what you come to isn't right, and that there is this God and there is this hell, and you then stand before this God to justify your life, and you say to this God, I devoted myself as much as possible, as wholly as I could, to trying to find you and to figure out what it is you wanted for my life and to do the things that you thought were right and good, and I worked as hard as I could to do that. And that God says, yeah, not good enough, I'm sending you to hell. Mm-hmm. Is that the type of God that you would even want to be with for eternity? A God that would do that?
Honestly, no, not really.
Okay, so wouldn't you think that if God was really worth his salt, if he was worth spending an eternity with and worth, wanting to be with, that it would be the type of God who would say, you came to the wrong conclusion, but you get an A for effort, and so you don't go to hell?
Mm-hmm.
If that God is going to send you to hell for investigating and working hard to find the truth, and ultimately the truth you come up with is whatever you come up with, right? But you applied yourself. In the end, if that God sends you to hell at the end of that, there is nothing else you could have done. You did everything you could, and you were just dealing with a jerk of a God.
Yeah.
So you
exactly.
you should never be afraid to doubt. You should never be afraid to investigate. You should never be afraid to apply whatever criticisms you need to apply, whatever skepticism you need to apply. You go out there and you make an honest search and you look at the evidence and you don't be afraid, because if there's a God that's worth being with, he's going to respect your effort.
On that note, Mike, I hope we've answered your question a little bit, give you some more thought to think about. Please call again another time, but we've got to wrap things up. I appreciate the call. I have no interest in worshiping. Well, first of all, worship is
I don't think I said worship, but if he wants to be with this God.
But I'm saying if God is the world's all-time champion of hide and seek, he can't really fault people for not finding him if they seek. Yeah.